Let me ask you a question. Do you find this attractive? Like, is this a hole you might want to explore? Because if it is, you just might be a fly. Because some flies really love going down that hole. I mean, it's a lot of them, isn't it? All packed in there in the dark. And it must get sweaty. I know what you're thinking, orgy. And I'll tell you, you're not far off, but it's not in the way you think. This plant, Helicodiscerus muscivorus, is sometimes referred to as the pig's butt arum. And in fairness, it does have that vibe. I mean, the tail really shouldn't come out of the... I mean, maybe it's not a tail. Maybe it's a toilet brush fetish. Anyway, the point is that this plant is just one of many plants that screw with flies. Literally. You'll see. Even before there were flowers, there were plenty of reasons for flies to be suspicious of plants. Back then, it was things like conifers and ferns. And you know what conifers do? They release their male stuff right into the wind. Hope it makes its way to some female bits. I mean, imagine if you went out on the balcony and just let go like that. Hey, everybody, who wants some babies? Get arrested. When the flowering plants arrived, they were like, we don't do that anymore. Also, we have free sugar water. And the insects were like, oh, cool, where? Oh, just look for the brightly colored genitals. Wait, the brightly colored what? Just free sugar. Anyway, so some of the flies gave it a shot, and only after they were face deep in the nectar did they realize they were covered in ejaculate. I mean, it's sort of like a threesome, but the middleman's just there for the snacks. But listen, that nectar must taste pretty good, because a lot of flies stuck with it. Now, along the way, some of the flowers played a little harder to get, put the nectar down a tube, and the flies with the longer mouth parts got more treats, and did a better job at pollinating those flowers. And you know those loops can get out of control. Pretty soon your mouth parts are longer than your body. I mean, at some point you gotta call a truce, because it starts getting hard to get that thing in the hole, especially if someone's watching. I mean, everyone's got their kink, right? These ones here in the family Tabanidi have to live their whole adult lives with that thing sticking out. Some flies in the family Nemestrididie went long too, but at least in this case they have the ability to tuck that shit between their legs when they're not working. The belle of the pornographer's ball. Now you might be saying, what's the big deal? Seems like an honest transaction. But these flies mainly use their vision to select flowers, and it's fairly easy to trick them with a lookalike. I mean, come on, rolled up paper? So of course there's flowers that look the part, but they don't give out any nectar, and that fly feel is used. It's called food deception, and I wish that were the worst of it. If you like these episodes, please consider joining patreon.com/truefacts. You'll see some behind the scenes of how the episodes are made, and some other things, but you'll also be supporting science communication and conservation, which includes the free YouTube channel True Facts Educational, where I take out the dick jokes so they can be shown in classrooms. Go to patreon.com/truefacts. Where were we? Oh, right. But flies don't just eat nectar, Jerry. There's flies that eat all sorts of crap. Case in point. I mean, come on, no reason to fight. That turd's more than enough for both of you. It is a liquid diet, though. Adult flies don't have their chewing mouth parts, but they get creative. Some spit out digestive juices, Hoctua, and then suck it all back in with their mouth mop. The foods that these flies like to eat often give off a distinctive odor, and flowers are notoriously good at creating odors. For example, fruit flies in the genus Zygothrica like to munch on mushrooms as they decompose. Obviously not a fruit, but these ones are rebels. And you know the smell they're after from that carton of button mushrooms that you forgot in the back of the crisper? Well, one way that the orchid Dracula erythricate seems to attract those flies is to make compounds that smell like those mushrooms. And you end up with a bunch of confused flies looking for that stash. Now you'll notice that this orchid has a sort of tongue that sticks out, called a labellum. Well, that bit is hinged a bit like a teeter-totter. When the fly lands on the front of it, it sort of drops down. But as the fly scrambles up it, there's a point at which the labellum tips the other way. And that sort of jams the fly's head up into, well, the flower's crotch. Now the point of that movement is to get a pollen swap with that fly. But not just little grains of it. It's a whole package. Right there you can see one stuck to that fly's back. The pollen packs are called pollinia, and they're often on a stem with a little sticky end. So not only are flies duped into looking for food that doesn't exist, like this one following the scent of rotting fruit in Gastrodia similis, but when they come out they look like an idiot. Imagine coming home after a day of work looking like this. No, it wasn't a strip club. Well, sort of. It's hard to explain. And orchids have all sorts of tricks to get the fly in just the right position to put on those silly hats. This one has a little runway of sugary secretions to get them up to that hinge. But some of those hinges are a bit more aggressive. They work more like a snap bracelet, trapping the fly for minutes or even hours while the system resets. And I'll tell you, this is what it's going to be like when we meet the aliens. You try to fish out some stuck chips in what you think is a vending machine, and for the next 2 hours your face is in some alien junk. But a seesaw's not the only way to trap a fly. There's a number of flies that like to feed on the oozings of insects that are being eaten by something else. Plants in the genus Cypripedium will often mimic the chemical distress signals that these insects give off. Flies might come looking for a half-eaten beetle, and as they climb down that tube you can see they have to navigate a bunch of little hairs. Well, inside that tube, the hairs point down, so you can climb in, but you can't climb out. And now you're stuck down there with a whole bunch of other flies saying, "Can you believe this bullshit?" Same sort of thing was going on in that pig's butt arum that we saw earlier, and you can see a variation of it in the flowers of Aristolochia esperanza. Oh no! But the point isn't to keep them there forever. Those little hairs that are blocking their exit only remain stiff while the female parts of the flower can accept pollen. Could be a day or two. Then the female part says it has a headache and becomes inactive. That's the cue for the male parts to start making the pollen. I mean, you don't want to have sex with yourself, too often. That's when the hairs start to wither, and as the flies squeeze out, they've got some new pollen on them. Not all flowers go full-on trap, though, and I don't blame them. It's got a tickle to have a belly full of flies. Lady slipper orchids are, well, slippery. They've got these oily secretions that gets curious flies to fall right in through the front door. Once they're inside, there's not a lot of room to fly, and they can't climb up the way they came in. So instead, they're forced to move through a hair-lined, narrow tube that leads to a back door. Near the exit, they first encounter the plant's lady bits to drop off pollen, and then the male parts to pick some up again. You can see some there on its back, and honestly, this one's kind of lucky. There's other lady slippers where the pollen's sort of mixed in with a sticky googe and come out with a smear instead of a backpack. Now these orchids appear to be using yet another layer of trickery. You see those spots there? Well, some flies seem to think that they're aphids, the sorts of flies that like to lay their eggs near aphids, so their babies can eat them. Works well enough that some of them actually do it. Drop their eggs right on that slippery surface. They're all going to die. Now, if you mix visual mimicry with odors, you've got yourself a powerful lure. Can't even imagine the shit that these flies have to deal with. I mean, Aristolochia arborea not only smells like mushrooms, but it grows a little fake one. I mean, it's a wonder these flies can find things they can actually eat. But the most egregious deceptions don't have to do with food at all. You don't have to be a genius to figure out what this fungus gnat's trying to do. I know what you're thinking. Got to be pretty hard up to try and screw a flower. But listen, it's giving off sex smells and oh, there it goes. And who knows what the fly thinks is happening now? Might be into it. And before you start blaming the orchids, you should know the daisies are in on it too. Apparently, those look like little female flies. And the male's all like, "Are you here alone?" And what she should say is, "No, there's fucking 3 of us having a luncheon." But she doesn't because she's not real. And you know what? The flowers aren't just doing this to the flies. Here's a bee, who you can certainly forgive for not finding the right angle, but he's still giving it the old college try. Here you got a wasp trying his best to bang a Caladenia orchid, and if you're feeling superior, like you wouldn't catch me doing something like that, then you might be underestimating the stank. I mean, look what happens when you put some on a sewing pin. Or is that a hat pin? Or, well, whatever it is, you're not supposed to do that with it. Similar sitch with this beetle, and kudos to him for not caring about looks. I mean, these flowers are so good at getting insects worked up that if you look close here, this male was in the process of mating with a female and still went for the flower. Right there, you can see her fall off. There's going to be some conversations when he gets home, I'll tell you that. No, Jerry, they're not called gynecologists. It's botanists. No, not botanists. No, not bottom, it's botanists. I mean, they sort of are like gynecologists, but didn't want to pay for med school.